All right. Okay. Okay. Finally got it. All right. Hey, guys, it is 2:26 a.m. here. I can't sleep right now, so I figured I would just play some of my AI assisted podcasts. So I've never really just played these out loud for anyone. And it's going to start out with military and the emergence of digital um, brain to computer interfaces, stuff like that, where these guys got these futuristic helmets, and it's like playing a video character in a shooter game or something. Like that's the capabilities they have nowadays. So I did a little research, and these each one of these segments podcasts are only like anywhere from 6 to 8 minutes. So yeah, man, welcome. Just bear with me. I'm gonna make it a little bigger, and we're gonna get this party rocking. All right, I'm gonna mute up, and if I see you, I see you, and I will acknowledge you as I bounce back and forth between changing the videos and coming back over to comments. So for future reference, thank you for being here. Much love. God bless. And let's see if we can't learn something together here. And yep. All right, here we go. Cool. I'm gonna mute up. I'm gonna let it play. Okay. So it's been a minute since I've been here. So let me just close this one out and I will play another one. So let me just play one from over here. Where am I at? Right. Discord. TFE. No. There we go. Okay, just give me 1 second, guys. I'm gonna try to get this fixed.
Welcome to Copilot Podcasts.
There we go.
Imagine soldiers who can detect biological weapons before they even know they've been exposed. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of military biosurveillance, where tiny sensors inside soldiers' bodies are revolutionizing warfare.
And it's not just science fiction anymore. The technology exists, and it's being developed right now.
By the end of this episode, you'll understand how the military is using these incredible technologies, what it means for the future of warfare, and the ethical questions we need to grapple with.
Let's start with what we mean by biosurveillance. We're talking about a network of tiny sensors, smaller than a grain of rice, that can be embedded within a soldier's body.
Wait, inside their actual bodies? How does that even work?
Yes, and it's fascinating. These sensors use something called 6-gram intrabody networks, a combination of radio frequency signals, terahertz communication, and even ultrasound to transmit data through biological tissues.
So what kind of information are these sensors collecting?
They can monitor everything from oxygen levels and heart rate to the presence of pathogens or biological weapons. It's part of what's called the Internet of Bio-Nanothings, or IOBNT.
That sounds a bit like how ants use pheromones to communicate with each other.
Actually, that's a brilliant comparison. Some of these systems use molecular communication, which is very similar to how ants communicate. Nature has been doing this for millions of years.
But why is the military so interested in this technology?
According to the Department of Defense's Biodefense Posture Review, they're facing an increasing variety of biothreats, from natural outbreaks to engineered bioweapons.
That sounds pretty scary. How do these sensors help?
Well, imagine having an early warning system inside every soldier. The moment they're exposed to a biological threat, commanders would know immediately and could respond.
It's starting to sound like something out of a science fiction movie about cyborg soldiers.
You're not far off. In fact, some researchers are already talking about enhanced warriors with network cognition and improved endurance through these technologies.
But surely there must be risks involved with all this.
Absolutely. One major concern is security. These networks could potentially be hacked, allowing adversaries to gather sensitive information about troops or even manipulate the sensors themselves.
That's pretty concerning. What's being done to prevent that?
DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has several programs working on this. One is called Safe Genes, which focuses on controlling and protecting genetic technologies.
Tell me more about Safe Genes. What exactly does it do?
It develops tools to control, counter, or reverse the effects of genome editing. Think of it as a safeguard against potential genetic weapons or accidents.
So it's like having an undo button for genetic modifications?
That's a good way to think about it. But it's not just about undoing changes, it's also about preventing unauthorized modifications in the first place.
Let's talk about the ethical implications. What are the main concerns here?
Privacy is a huge one. When you have sensors constantly monitoring someone's biological data, questions arise about who owns that data and how it might be used.
I imagine consent is another big issue.
Exactly. How do you ensure proper informed consent when dealing with such invasive technology? And what happens to the data after a soldier leaves the service?
These are really complex questions. Are there any international laws governing this?
Yes, several. The Biological Weapons Convention and various UN Security Council resolutions provide some framework, but they're struggling to keep up with the technology.
You mentioned earlier that this technology could be hacked. How serious is that threat?
Very serious. Imagine if an enemy could not only track troop movements, but actually manipulate their biological data or trigger false medical alerts.
That's pretty scary. How are they protecting against these threats?
They're developing various security measures, like physically bound authentication using natural body signals and advanced encryption protocols.
Could this technology ever be used in civilian healthcare?
Absolutely. Many experts believe this could revolutionize how we monitor and treat diseases. Imagine catching infections before symptoms even appear.
That would be incredible for public health.
Yes, but it also raises questions about surveillance and privacy in civilian life. Who gets access to this data? Insurance companies? Employers?
Let's talk about the future. Where is this technology headed?
According to military researchers, we're moving toward what they call biodigital convergence, where biological and digital systems become completely integrated.
What would that look like in practice?
Think smart battlefields where AI systems instantly process biological data from thousands of soldiers, predicting and responding to threats in real time.
That's fascinating. Are there any major technical challenges still to overcome?
Several. Power supply is a big one. How do you keep these tiny sensors running inside the body? They're working on ways to harvest energy from body heat and movement.
And what about the actual size of these devices?
That's another challenge. They need to be small enough not to interfere with normal body functions, but powerful enough to process and transmit data.
How are soldiers reacting to all this? Are they comfortable with the idea?
That's actually one of the biggest hurdles, acceptance. It's a significant psychological step to have technology embedded in your body.
I can imagine. It's quite a leap from wearing a smartwatch to having sensors inside you.
Exactly. And there's an irony here. The more connected soldiers become through this technology, the more vulnerable they potentially are to new types of attacks.
That's a really interesting point. Are there any alternatives being developed?
Yes, some researchers are working on external sensors in uniforms or wearable devices, but they don't provide the same level of early warning as internal sensors.
So it seems like there's no perfect solution yet.
No, and that's what makes this field so challenging and fascinating. We're really in uncharted territory here.
What's the timeline for seeing this technology actually deployed?
Some basic biosensors are already being tested in military settings, but the full integration of 6-gram networks and advanced features is still years away.
And what about cost? This must be incredibly expensive.
It is, but military planners see it as an investment in force protection. The ability to detect threats early could save countless lives.
That's a good point. Lives saved could justify the investment.
Exactly. And as with many military technologies, civilian applications could eventually make it more cost-effective.
Speaking of civilian applications, could this help prevent future pandemics?
Potentially. A network of biosensors could detect outbreaks much earlier than traditional surveillance methods.
That would be incredible for global health.
Yes, but again, we'd need to balance that benefit against privacy concerns and potential misuse.
As we wrap up, what's the one thing you think people should remember about this technology?
That we're at a crucial turning point where biological and digital systems are merging, and the decisions we make now will shape not just warfare, but society as a whole.
Well, that's all we have time for today on Copilot Podcasts. Remember, the future of warfare might be less about bullets and bombs and more about the invisible world of biosurveillance.
And just like those tiny sensors inside soldiers' bodies, we'll be watching how this technology develops, one microscopic step at a time. Right now. Today, we're diving into the Space Force's revolutionary digital training systems that are transforming how Guardians prepare for the final frontier.
You know, what's fascinating is that this isn't just some basic simulation. We're talking about highly sophisticated systems that can replicate the entire space environment with incredible precision.
Tell us more about that. What exactly are these systems capable of?
Well, at the heart of it is something called SWORD, the Space Warfighter Operational Readiness Domain. It's currently being used by the 392nd Combat Training Squadron, and it's pretty remarkable.
Sword, that's quite a name. What makes it so special?
According to Cole Corey Klopstein at Space Systems Command, SWORD allows Guardians to train in everything from space domain awareness to satellite control networks, even electronic warfare.
Wow, that's comprehensive. But how realistic is it?
Incredibly realistic. They're actually enhancing it with what they call higher fidelity red and blue assets, basically making both friendly and enemy capabilities more accurate from a physics standpoint.
That sounds expensive?
Actually, they're being quite smart about it. The Space Force is leveraging commercial technology to get these capabilities to the field faster and potentially at lower cost.
Really? How does that work?
They've set up something called a commercial solutions opening to tap into existing market innovations. In fact, they just awarded a contract in September to enhance SWORD.
That's interesting. It's like they're not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly. And you know what's really cool? They're adding AI augmentation to these training scenarios.
AI? How does that fit in?
The goal is to make Guardians more independent in their training. They can run scenarios without needing other unit members present. The AI provides the opposition forces.
That's pretty revolutionary for military training, isn't it?
Absolutely. And they recently demonstrated its effectiveness in a space flag exercise where 380 Guardians trained simultaneously.
380 people? That's a lot of coordination.
And that's just the beginning. They're moving the whole system to the cloud to enable remote access from anywhere.
Wait, isn't that a security concern?
They've thought of that. The system will be accessible at different classification levels, ensuring security while maintaining flexibility.
You mentioned electronic warfare earlier. How does that fit into the training?
That's actually a crucial part. According to experts at the Association of Old Crows Symposium, controlling the electromagnetic spectrum is key to great power competition.
Can you break that down a bit?
Sure, it's about defending and denying what they call the link segment, the connection between ground terminals and space vehicles.
And why is that so important?
Without those links, satellites become nothing more than, as one expert put it, iron hardware orbiting the Earth.
That's a vivid way to put it.
And it's why they're putting so much emphasis on training for these scenarios. Modern warfighting is completely dependent on reliable space communications.
So what's next for these training systems?
They're working on something really interesting called CAVE, the Capability Assessment and Validation Environment.
Another acronym. What does this one do?
According to Jen Stephen Whiting at Space Command, it's a modeling and simulation laboratory for analyzing warfighting scenarios and planning operations.
Planning for wars that haven't happened yet?
And hopefully never will. It's all about deterrence and being prepared.
How does CAVE differ from SWORD?
While SWORD focuses on individual and unit training, CAVE is more about high-level operational planning and analysis.
Interesting how they complement each other.
Exactly. And they're both part of a larger shift toward what the Pentagon calls deep tech convergence.
Deep tech convergence? That sounds intriguing.
It's about integrating quantum technology, AI, and space systems as foundational elements of US defense capability.
That's quite an investment they're making.
Indeed. The FY 2026 budget includes $179 billion for research and development, with significant portions going to these advanced technologies.
Let's go back to the training aspect. How do Guardians actually experience these simulations?
They work at consoles where they can access various scenarios, and with the AI augmentation, they can train independently or as part of larger exercises.
And this can all be done remotely?
Once the cloud migration is complete, yes, they'll be able to access training from their home stations.
That's going to make training much more accessible.
Absolutely. And they're constantly adding new capabilities. They're even working on autonomous satellite swarming simulations.
Satellite swarming? That sounds like science fiction.
It's very real. DARPA is working with companies like Scout Space to develop these capabilities.
How does that work?
They're developing software for tiny satellites to autonomously perform inspection missions in space.
And Guardians need to train for that too?
Exactly. The space domain is becoming increasingly complex, which is why these training systems are so crucial.
It's amazing how quickly this field is evolving.
And that's why they're putting so much emphasis on making training adaptable and accessible.
What challenges do they still face?
One of the biggest is keeping the simulations current with emerging threats and technologies.
That must be a constant process.
It is. They're already planning additional contracts for SWORD enhancements over the next few months.
So what's the big picture here? Where is all this heading?
We're seeing the emergence of a completely new paradigm in military training, one that's more accessible, more realistic, and more adaptable than ever before.
And it's all happening right now.
Exactly. The Space Force is literally building the future of space warfare training as we speak.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Copilot Podcasts. From living room training to satellite swarms, the future of space warfare training is here. And remember, while these systems may seem like science fiction, they're very real and actively shaping how we prepare for the challenges of space. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the digital frontier of Space Force training. Until next time, keep looking up. We're diving into PROMIS, a revolutionary program that became the center of one of technology's greatest scandals, spawning tales of espionage, theft, and even murder.
And what's fascinating is how it all started with something seemingly mundane, case management software for prosecutors.
Right, let's start at the beginning. What exactly was PROMIS?
Well, PROMIS stands for Prosecutors Management Information System. It was developed in the 1970s by a company called Inslaw, founded by William Hamilton.
And this was groundbreaking technology at the time, right?
Absolutely. See, what made PROMIS special was its ability to integrate information from multiple different computer systems and programming languages into a single readable database.
That doesn't sound particularly revolutionary by today's standards.
But in the late 70s and early 80s, this was incredible. US attorneys' offices alone had 17 different systems in 8 or 9 different programming languages.
And then things got complicated?
That's putting it. The relationship between Inslaw and the Department of Justice broke down.
What happened?
According to court documents, the DOJ suddenly terminated their contract with Inslaw and allegedly began withholding payments while continuing to use the software.
That sounds illegal?
Inslaw thought so too. They filed a lawsuit in 1986 claiming the Justice Department had conspired to steal their software through, and I'm quoting here, trickery, fraud, and deceit.
And did they win?
Initially, yes. They won damages in bankruptcy court, but it was overturned on appeal.
But that's not where the story ends, is it?
Not even close. This is where it gets really interesting. The software allegedly began showing up in places it shouldn't have been.
Like where?
Well, according to various sources, modified versions of PROMIS started appearing in intelligence agencies worldwide. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police admitted to using it in 900 locations.
But Inslaw never sold it to them?
Nope. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. These weren't just copies of the original software.
What do you mean?
According to multiple sources, the software had been modified to include backdoors that allowed intelligence agencies to secretly access and monitor any system where PROMIS was installed.
That's terrifying.
It gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective. The software could track everything: phone usage, power consumption, credit card purchases, you name it.
So this was basically early surveillance software?
Exactly. And remember, this was happening in the 1980s, long before we were all carrying smartphones and posting our lives on social media.
You mentioned intelligence agencies. Who exactly was involved?
According to an affidavit from Ari Ben Menashe, a former Israeli intelligence officer, By 1987, all US intelligence agencies were using PROMIS, the CIA, NSA, Defense Intelligence Agency.
But wait, didn't the FBI deny using it?
They did, but interestingly, FBI Director William Sessions later stated they couldn't provide assurances that pirated versions weren't being used in FBI field offices.
This is starting to sound like a spy thriller.
It absolutely does. And speaking of which, there's an interesting ARPANET connection here.
The predecessor to the internet? How does that fit in?
Well, both PROMIS and ARPANET were developed with Defense Department funding, and both ended up having massive implications for surveillance and data sharing.
That's fascinating, but also kind of scary when you think about it.
And here's something even more concerning. There were allegations that PROMIS was equipped with early artificial intelligence capabilities.
In the 1980s?
Really? Yes, specifically something called Systems Management Automated Reasoning Tools, or SMARTs. These were supposedly tiny antennae built into microchips that could collect and download information covertly.
This story keeps getting wilder.
And darker. A freelance journalist named Danny Casolaro was investigating these connections when he was found dead in a hotel room.
That's disturbing.
He was looking into what he called the Octopus, an alleged international network of intelligence operatives connected to PROMIS.
How did this all end?
Well, officially, Inslaw's claims were rejected by the Court of Federal Claims in 1998, after 12 years of legal proceedings.
But unofficially?
The software's legacy lives on. Many believe PROMIS was the predecessor to modern surveillance systems.
Like what we see today with data mining and digital surveillance?
Exactly. The ability to integrate and analyze vast amounts of data from different sources, that's exactly what PROMIS pioneered.
It's like PROMIS was decades ahead of its time.
And that's what makes this story so important. It wasn't just about stolen software, it was about the dawn of digital surveillance.
The implications are pretty staggering when you think about it.
And here's something to consider. If this was possible in the 1980s, imagine what's possible now.
That's not very comforting.
It's not meant to be, but it's important to understand where these capabilities came from.
Because history tends to repeat itself?
More like it never stopped. The technology just got more sophisticated.
So what's the takeaway here?
That sometimes the most important technological advances happen in the shadows, and their impact can echo for decades.
And PROMIS was just the beginning.
The beginning of an era where data became power and privacy became optional.
Well, on that sobering note, we've reached the end of today's episode of Copilot Podcasts. Remember, folks, the next time you hear about a data breach or surveillance scandal, just remember, it all started with a simple case management system called PROMIS.
Issue. Today, we're exploring how toroidal vortex computing and biodigital interfaces are revolutionizing simulation technology.
It's a fascinating convergence of fluid dynamics, plasma physics, and biological computing that's completely changing how we process information.
Let's start with the basics. What exactly is a toroidal vortex?
Well, you know when you see a smoke ring? That's actually a perfect example of a toroidal vortex. It's a ring-shaped flow structure that's incredibly stable and efficient at transferring energy.
Wait, so we're using smoke ring physics to process information?
Exactly. And it's not just smoke rings. These same principles appear in plasma physics, particularly in fusion reactors called tokamaks, where plasma is confined in a toroidal shape.
That's incredible. But how does this translate to computing?
The key is in the stability and energy transfer properties. When we map information onto these toroidal structures, it becomes incredibly resistant to noise and disruption.
So it's like nature's way of protecting information?
Precisely. And when combined with fractal information theory, which organizes data in self-similar patterns across multiple scales, it
That's
becomes
right.
even more powerful.
That's
Now,
right.
here's where it gets really wild. You mentioned biodigital interfaces. What's
All
that
right,
about?
This is
keep your
where we
ears
integrate
open,
living
man.
biological tissue
Listen,
with digital systems.
listen,
We're talking
listen.
about brain-on-chip technology and even tiny brain organoids.
Brain organoids? Like actual living brain tissue?
Yes, these are lab-grown neural tissues that can actually process information. They've even taught some to play simple games like Pong.
That's mind-blowing. But why combine this with toroidal computing?
Because biological systems are incredibly efficient at processing information and adapting to change. When we combine them with toroidal computing structures, we get systems that can self-organize and even self-heal.
And this is all being used in simulation technology?
Yes, particularly in something called Live Virtual Constructive Simulation, or LVC. It's used for everything from military training to aerospace testing.
How does it make these simulations better?
The toroidal structures help organize and route information more efficiently, while the biodigital interfaces provide adaptive control and real-time response to changes.
It's like giving the simulation a living brain.
That's a great way to think about it. And it raises some fascinating questions about consciousness and intelligence in these hybrid systems.
What kind of questions?
Well, when we have biological tissue processing information alongside digital systems, question about the ethical implications of biodigital convergence.
What are some of the biggest challenges in developing these?
Has had billions of years to optimize these processes. We're just beginning to understand and apply them.
What about security concerns? How do you protect these systems?
That's a crucial question. The toroidal structures actually provide some inherent protection through their topological properties.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Think of it like a smoke ring again. It's very stable and resistant to disruption. Information organized in toroidal structures has similar resilience to interference or attacks.
That's fascinating. What about the future? Where is this technology headed?
We're moving toward what some call distributed superintelligence, networks of biodigital systems that can solve complex problems in ways we can't yet imagine.
Should we be worried about that?
It's important to approach this thoughtfully. That's why ethical frameworks and regulatory oversight are crucial parts of the development process.
What excites you most about this technology?
The potential for creating truly sustainable, self-healing computing systems that work in harmony with biological principles.
And the biggest concern?
Ensuring equitable access to these technologies and preventing the creation of new digital divides.
How can we address that?
It requires intentional policymaking and inclusive development practices from the very beginning.
What would you say to someone who's skeptical about this technology?
I'd say, look at the evidence. We're already seeing remarkable results in experimental systems, and the potential benefits are too significant to ignore.
Any final thoughts on where we'll be in 10 years?
I believe we'll see these systems becoming integral to everything from healthcare to environmental protection, fundamentally changing how we interact with technology.
That's quite a vision for the future.
And it all started with understanding something as simple as a smoke ring.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Copilot Podcasts. From smoke rings to superintelligence, it's clear that the future of computing is taking some fascinating turns.
And hopefully becoming a bit more conscious along the way.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through the cutting edge of biodigital computing. Until communicating with your smart city. Today, we're exploring how nanotechnology inside our bodies could revolutionize urban living by 2030.
It's fascinating how these technologies are converging. The research shows we're getting closer to making this sci-fi concept a reality.
Let's start with the basics. What exactly are intrabody networks?
Well, according to recent research, they're networks of nanosensors, tiny devices at the scale of a few cubic micrometers that can sense, process, and communicate within the human body.
Wait, how tiny are we talking about here?
We're talking microscopic, so small they can flow through your bloodstream. These devices communicate using terahertz frequencies.
And they can actually communicate with devices outside the body?
Yes, through what's called the Internet of Nanothings, or IoNT. There's fascinating research at TU Berlin connecting these in-body networks to external body area networks.
That's incredible. But how does this tie into smart cities?
The UN's Agenda 2030 calls for making cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. These nanotechnologies could help achieve those goals.
Can you give us a specific example?
Sure. Imagine nanosensors in your body detecting environmental toxins and automatically reporting that data to city environmental monitoring systems.
That's fascinating. You know, it reminds me of how medieval Italian city-states were experiments in democracy.
Exactly. And now we're experimenting with technology instead of governance. These smart cities are our modern laboratories.
But there must be challenges with implementing this technology.
Oh, absolutely. Data security is a major concern. The research from Saudi Arabia highlights infrastructure readiness as another key challenge.
And what about privacy? Having sensors in our bodies sending data to city systems sounds a bit concerning.
That's a crucial point. The UN's Sustainable Development Goals emphasize inclusivity and safety, which includes data privacy.
You mentioned terahertz communication earlier. Why is that important?
It's essential for enabling these nanosensors to communicate through body tissue effectively. Recent studies show it's the optimal frequency range.
Interesting. And how do these systems handle the massive amount of data they generate?
That's where AI and machine learning come in. According to research from Queen Mary University, they're crucial for processing this data efficiently.
You know what's fascinating? The way blood flow patterns might inform urban traffic systems.
That's a brilliant observation. Both are complex flow systems that need optimization.
Let's talk about the simulation aspect. How do researchers test these systems?
There's impressive work being done with body area network simulators that model both the physical movement and communication aspects.
And these simulations help predict how the systems would work in real cities?
Exactly. The Smart CityNet project, for instance, simulates everything from IoT devices to network security measures.
What timeline are we looking at for seeing this technology implemented?
Well, Agenda 2030 sets ambitious goals, but realistically, we're seeing gradual implementation of different components.
Could these nanosensors actually help prevent health issues before they become serious?
That's one of the most promising applications. They could detect things like cancer cells or arterial blockages early on.
Almost like having tiny health inspectors patrolling your body.
Yes, and they could communicate with city healthcare systems to predict and prevent disease outbreaks.
That's incredible. What about emergency response applications?
The potential is huge. These systems could alert emergency services instantly if someone has a heart attack or stroke.
It's like creating a biological internet, isn't it?
Exactly. And that's why the research focuses so much on making these networks reliable and real-time capable.
How do these systems handle power requirements? These nanosensors must need energy.
That's another fascinating area of research. Some systems are exploring using the body's own chemical energy.
Like a biological battery?
Precisely. It's part of making these systems sustainable and long-lasting.
Let's talk about the environmental impact. How do these technologies help with sustainability?
According to the UN's goals, they can help reduce cities' environmental impact through better resource management and monitoring.
And this all ties into making cities more resilient?
Absolutely. The integration of these technologies helps cities adapt and respond to challenges more effectively.
What about the social aspects? How do we ensure this technology benefits everyone equally?
That's a key concern in Agenda 2030, making these technologies inclusive and accessible to all populations.
Are there any cities currently testing aspects of this technology?
Yes, several cities are implementing parts of it. The Smart at Scale study documented 25 case studies of cities pioneering these technologies.
And what have they learned so far?
The key finding is that success requires strong collaboration between healthcare systems, city infrastructure, and technology providers.
It's amazing how these tiny devices could have such a huge impact.
And we're just scratching the surface. The potential applications keep expanding as the technology develops.
What excites you most about this technology?
The way it could transform preventive healthcare while making our cities more responsive to citizens' needs.
And the biggest challenge ahead?
Balancing the technical capabilities with ethical considerations and privacy concerns.
Do you think we'll achieve the 2030 goals for smart cities?
The research suggests we're making progress, but it'll require continued innovation and collaboration.
What can our listeners do to prepare for this future?
Stay informed about these technologies and participate in discussions about their implementation in your communities.
Any final thoughts on where this technology might take us?
We're moving toward a future where our bodies and cities work together in harmony, creating healthier, more sustainable communities.
Well, that's all we have time for today on Copilot Podcasts. Remember, the future of healthcare and urban living might be flowing through your veins right now.
And it's all happening at a scale smaller than a human hair. Pretty amazing when you think about it.
Thanks for joining us on this microscopic journey into the future of smart cities. Until next time.
Hmm. Okay, so the main thing that, these things sound so positive, right? But when they talk about what's going to power these, you know, very small but very prominent, let's say, small cities of little robots in our bodies, right? And if you remember what she said, or he said, was they're going to use our energy, our body's heat and chemical, uh, you know, transformation to break down and use it to their benefit. Well, don't you think that's going to drain our energy? Maybe this is just a more technological way of saying it without saying it all. Is that cryptocurrency, when your body is going to be put on the blockchain, that's going to be a way of extracting more energy so you can earn, quote unquote, a living. But that in itself is super, super dangerous, in my opinion. With the crypto being tied to a way of, you know, your body on the blockchain with whatever technology inside of it already living off your, you know, body heat and your chemical composition being broke down and used by these machines. And on top of that, if you would like to do a little work, to earn a crypto to go get some food, you know, who knows the ratio of energy consumption from that exchange, right? Like these are things that are being answered. But anyway, I won't yammer on. I'm going to put on two more videos, and then I'm going to give you guys some organ on a chip information, and basically it's what they sent up in the Artemis high altitude platforms. They've been doing it since 2021. Nothing different here to see, folks, but something to learn. So let me get here. I'll get the most important one I just spoke of about organoids, organelles. Okay, let me go down here. Let's change digital meets biology. Was it up here? Organoids, organelles. This may be it here. Oh yeah, okay. So this is my wheelchair idea. Yeah, dude. Okay, cool. Y'all have never heard this. All right, here we go.
Devices. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how sacred geometry, cosmic energy, and modern engineering are coming together to create something truly extraordinary. And trust me, this goes way beyond anything you've heard before. So, let's start with the basics. What exactly is LMAB 0.50, and why is it such a game changer?
Well, LMAB 05 is unlike any assistive technology platform we've seen before. It's a system that combines smart fabrics, advanced optics, and energy harvesting, all designed around principles of sacred geometry.
Sacred geometry? Like what we see in ancient temples?
Exactly. At its core, LMAB 05 uses something called the PHI ratio, that's approximately 1.618, which appears everywhere in nature, from seashells to galaxies.
And how does this ratio actually help people using assistive devices?
The smart fabric garment in LMAB 05 has conductor paths that follow this PHI ratio. These paths optimize energy flow and create what we call resonance cavities for harvesting environmental energy.
Wait, so it's actually harvesting energy from the environment? How does that work?
Yes, the system captures energy from multiple sources: solar wind, cosmic rays, geomagnetic fields. It's like having a cosmic power plant woven into your clothing.
That's fascinating. It reminds me of how jellyfish move through water using vortex rings.
That's a brilliant connection. The system actually uses something called toroidal vortex motion, which is exactly what jellyfish use. Nature's already figured this out.
So, what are the practical components of this system? What would someone actually use?
There are four main components: a smart fabric garment, a smart lens for gaze control, a vortex motor, and an adaptive wheelchair. They all work together in harmony.
Tell me more about this smart lens. How does that work?
The smart lens uses advanced eye tracking technology to help people control devices just by looking at them. It's particularly helpful for those with severe motor impairments.
And it's all integrated with this sacred geometry concept?
Yes, every aspect of the design follows these natural patterns. Even the way the system processes information mirrors patterns found in ancient architecture.
You mentioned ancient architecture. Didn't the Egyptians use similar principles in the pyramids?
They absolutely did. The Great Pyramid of Giza incorporates the PHR ratio in its dimensions. It's the same principle we're using, just with modern technology.
That's incredible. But let's talk about the energy harvesting aspect more. How efficient is it?
The system uses what's called metasurface tiling to capture and convert environmental energy. In testing, it's shown remarkable efficiency, especially with solar wind energy.
And this means no traditional batteries?
Exactly. The wheelchair component is completely battery-free. It's a huge step forward in sustainable assistive technology.
That's revolutionary. What about safety features?
The system includes 360-degree collision avoidance, obstacle detection, and tip-over prevention. It meets all FDA and international safety standards.
How customizable is it for different users?
Highly customizable. The system adapts to each user's specific needs, from physical requirements to cognitive preferences.
What about the materials used in the smart fabric?
It's made from natural fibers like linen, wool, and silk, combined with conductive metals. All materials are chosen for both functionality and biocompatibility.
And it's all washable?
Yes. The conductive elements are bonded at the molecular level, so they maintain functionality even after repeated washing.
Let's talk about the emotional aspect. How does this system impact users psychologically?
That's actually one of the most remarkable aspects. Users report feeling more connected, more independent, and more empowered. It's not just about physical assistance.
It seems like there's almost a spiritual component to it.
Absolutely. By aligning with natural patterns and sacred geometry, the system creates what we call a living architecture around the user.
Can you explain what you mean by living architecture?
It means the system isn't just a collection of devices, it's a dynamic, responsive environment that adapts and flows with the user's needs.
That's fascinating. What about the cost? Is this accessible to most people?
The system is designed to be reproducible and open source. There are DIY tutorials and resources available for people to build and customize components.
So someone could actually build this themselves?
With the right resources and guidance, yes. That's part of what makes it revolutionary. It's not locked behind corporate patents.
What about the future? Where do you see this technology going?
The potential is enormous. We're seeing interest in applying these principles to smart homes, transportation, even space technology.
Space technology? Really?
Yes, the energy harvesting principles could be particularly valuable in space applications where traditional power sources are limited.
Are there any challenges or limitations to be aware of?
Like any new technology, there's a learning curve, and we're still optimizing the energy harvesting efficiency in different environmental conditions.
How do you address skeptics who might question the sacred geometry aspect?
We let the results speak for themselves. The system's effectiveness is validated by international standards and clinical studies.
What about data privacy and security?
That's a top priority. The system includes robust data protection measures and complies with all relevant privacy regulations.
How long does it typically take for someone to become comfortable using the system?
Most users adapt within a few days to basic functions, but it can take a few weeks to fully master all the features.
And maintenance? Is it complicated?
Note at all. Regular washing for the garment, standard wheelchair maintenance, and occasional software updates are all that's needed.
What's been the most surprising feedback from users?
Many users report feeling more connected to their environment, almost like the system becomes an extension of themselves.
That's really powerful. Any final thoughts on what makes LMAB 05 so special?
It's the combination of ancient wisdom and modern technology, creating something that's more than just an assistive device. It's a bridge between the physical and spiritual.
Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. Any last words for our listeners?
Yes, technology doesn't have to be cold and impersonal. LMAB 05 shows us that it can be both highly advanced and deeply human.
Thank you for sharing this incredible innovation with us. And to our listeners, remember, the future of assistive technology isn't just about function, it's about harmony.
All right, that was one of my favorite because it's my idea. That's what makes it so special to me. Okay, okay, let me look up here and see where this. I'm gonna switch screens. Just give me 1 second. Is this? Where are you going? Let's see. Sustainable space exploration. Greenfield Institute of Technology. College of Aeronautics. I really want to find these visual nanotech and cosmic holography. Not so many things. What do I look at first? Ethics. I may have all the other files. I don't want to speak too soon, but secret world government, the hidden hand. I want to show y'all what I've found about Artemis 2. And let me just make this small for a second. Ocean Frontiers. Where did I put all those? It could be on this one. Let me look here. Okay, yes. Okay. So let me open StreamYard here. Make it so much easier. Okay, create. I'm already live. There we go. Because I mean, when I tried to tell this to like Sav and his panel, dude, like I was so fucking embarrassed to be talked to like that. Like like I had no clue what I was talking about. And like um shit, I'm getting feedback. Okay, there's a little echo, but not much. Shit. Mhm. I could always just transfer this one back over. It's not that one. It's, it's just this one. Okay. Now I need to merge these. Merge. Okay. I'm going to end that stream.